I think we're about to get started here. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. Latest part of At Home with USA Water Polo. Greg Mescall here with you, and we have the pleasure of being joined by members of the 2000 Olympic teams for Team USA for women's water polo. As we talked about last night, this was the first Olympic Games to feature women's water polo, and so a really historic moment in the sport. And we have some members from Team USA, including Heather Moody and Julie Swail, athletes in the pool, and then head coach Guy Baker. And we may be joined as well by Maureen O'Toole. And as soon as we see her, we'll add her in as well. But we want to just remember what was obviously a huge moment in women's water polo and also for Team USA. And before we get into the actual gameplay, I kind of want to start with just that road to getting water polo to be approved. And, Julie, starting with you about your national team career leading up into Sydney, what's that memory like of trying to get water polo included and not really knowing if that would be a thing that would happen?
Well, yeah, both Heather and I played on the team when the grand finale was World Championships, and so we made the decision that we want to play water polo, and that was kind of it. And so after Worlds in '98. That was the point where we knew, like, in 2 years, there's going to be something more. So we knew that there was a lot of backing by Australia in trying to make a push to get it added. To be honest, I was a little skeptical because I heard the same stories for '96. I thought it would be much more likely to happen in Atlanta when the Olympics were there in '96. And when it didn't happen, I, had just kind of decided, well, I'm going to play and World Championships will be it. And that's fine. But when it was finally added, it took it to a whole new level. Our level of play. Guy came in and started coaching us, and we had great coaches before that, but brought a lot of college athletes in, and it was a whole new level of pain and workouts. Thanks, Guy.
Moody, similar question to you. You're in that similar position with Julie, and you talked to some athletes. They were hearing those stories back in 1984. Oh, water polo is going to get added to the Olympic Games for women. And, if it's not this one, it's going to be 88. If it's not that, it'll be 92. Was there a little sense of like, I'll believe it when I see it? What was your reaction?
I would say, yeah, that it was like, okay, well, let's just get through the 98 World Championships. They were in Perth, Australia. There was a big buzz about the Olympic Games coming into Sydney. And, but you just kind of, I think we were taking it one tournament at a time because with Julie and I, and even Mo, and there's a group of us, we were part of that, like, I was definitely part of the group where it was like, okay, this is what we're doing, World Championships, and then phasing into the Olympics was definitely a transition. And it was kind of like having the history and knowing the history that was like got us there, like in '96 and then for the Atlanta Games, there was a big push. I mean, it was really, okay, it's the US, we're definitely going to get in. It was exciting. And then when it didn't happen, it was just that huge letdown. And so I think most of us in '98, we were just kind of sitting there, not trying to get super excited about the possibility of 2 years of something bigger. We were just taking that moment of World Championships and achieving such a great accomplishment for that team to get there and to compete. We were just kind of staying focused on that. And then when it did get announced, it was another whole nother experience.
Guy, as you think back on those early years coaching Team USA, you had been coaching at UCLA, very successful there. How did the challenge in your mind compare? Now you're going to take on the national team, but also going into something brand new for women's water polo and having to lead a team into the Olympics?
Good question. I was at the World Championships with the men's side in '98, so I did see a number of games, and we had 2 UCLA players that were playing on the team, so we're watching the games. And we had a year to qualify. First chance to qualify was going to be in May of 1999, so felt like at the time, like we had plenty of time to get together, practice, train, and thought we would have a good opportunity to qualify the very first chance we had the opportunity to qualify.
And as we talk about qualification, it was not something that happened at the Pan American Games, but it comes the next year in 2000 in the Olympic qualifier. Guy, let's stick with you on this for the moment. Just it's one thing for the sport to get added to the Olympics, but now you have to make sure that the U.S. team actually gets to go. What's that pressure like coming off of that first shot, the Pan Ams, and then going into the qualification tournament?
Yeah, it was the only time that happened. The first chance for us to qualify was at actually the FINA Cup, which they call now the World Cup. And they put in I won't get too long in the story, but they put a thing in for that the top European team would qualify and the top America's team would qualify. So we actually had two chances to qualify at that event. We had tied Australia and beat Canada, and we played Netherlands. And honestly, we had just tied Netherlands. We'd have been in the top four, and Canada was already in the 5 through 8 bracket, and we would have qualified. But we lost to Netherlands, and then through the process, we ended up playing Canada, and we lost to Canada in the 5th place game, and they qualified. And now we're in the process of getting one more chance for the 2000 Olympic qualification games. All the other Olympic games since, it's always been the Pan American Games. That was the only one that was along that line. So by the time we got to the game against Hungary to qualify, we were pretty experienced. We'd already been through it twice. We had 2 opportunities where we could already been in. So that was our 3rd try. We're the only ones that were in that boat. So we had a pretty good, not a good experience as far as feeling, but we definitely had a couple matches already to kind of get through the process of trying to get to Olympic Games.
Heather, what are your memories of that qualification process? And what I imagine was a pretty intense couple of tournaments to try to make sure that you do get a chance to be in these Olympic Games.
I think it was definitely intense. I think our first opportunity playing Holland in that game to get the top 4, being so close and then falling short, and then going into a game against Canada where it's a evenly matched, and like we are usually matched up really well with them, and they just came and outplayed us, and it was really kind of it was deflating. Like, I think all of us really didn't know what was going to happen, because just the history and like being so new and like being part of this process of going for the Olympics, we had to go to Europe and qualify in Europe, which was that's a whole nother mountain that we had to climb and overcome. Like, most of it was psychological on our standpoint, on making sure that we were comfortable and like we were ready mentally. And so I think with that loss in Canada and not qualifying the first round actually made us a better team, because we really went back to the drawing board and we became closer, and we did a lot of things away from the pool for us to get to know each other more. And I think that really kind of helped us gel as a group and kind of overcome that adversity together, and really kind of pave the way for our journey to the Olympics.
Julie, fans that follow Team USA now, they see the gold medals, they see all the results, and it looks like we have Maureen O'Toole joining us here now. Great to have her in the mix as well. Maureen, thanks for joining us, coming in from Australia. Appreciate that. Julie, as you go into these Olympic Games, today's fans look at Team USA and expect, of course, they're going to be there, and of course, they're going to go for the podium. It's how it's always gone. What was the expectation of the national team going into Sydney? Was a qualification a done deal, a medal, all of that? What do you remember?
The qualification, like Heather said, was not a done deal. We were competing in Europe, and we had to place in the top 2. And I remember that game where it was the semifinal, and we realized we were in the medal round, and we were celebrating like we had just won the gold medal in the qualification tournament, because it didn't really matter. I mean, of course we wanted to win, but we were at the Olympics. But one of the things that, our team definitely believed that we were gold medal contenders. But I remember, over and over, Sports Illustrated was one that I remember. They ranked the teams, and they basically said, well, Kazakhstan was clearly number 6. Everyone agreed that. And then just above Kazakhstan, like, that's probably where the US is going to fall. And you're like, come on, we're American, you're American. Can't you have some confidence in us? And, while we didn't want to see that, and it was a little embarrassing to think people are going to read this and think that we're not that good, it also provided great motivation, because when we hit that first game against the Netherlands, who was really the most decorated team at that point, and we just walked all over them. I don't think they knew what hit them. And it was definitely a good indication of the team that we were. And I think that opened some eyes.
Mo, we're talking about the lead up to Sydney and the qualification process, and your story was one that was written about a lot coming out of retirement to make this push to Sydney. Was there a part of you that was thinking like, I did not start this again to not qualify? What's your memory of trying to punch that ticket for Sydney?
Well, I mean, I remember when we tried to qualify in Canada and we didn't make it, and that was absolutely devastating. And we went back and we had to re-qualify. Going to Europe, like Julie said, was going to be super hard. And yeah, I mean, I was definitely thinking, for me as an individual, selfishly, that was my only chance. I wasn't going to have another chance. And I think that Guy really had us super prepared for it, but it was still really nerve-wracking because we had to make it into the top 2. And there's a lot of good teams there were teams that didn't make it that should have been there. But so it was, yeah, I mean, I remember specifically, I think if I remember correctly, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were playing Hungary and we were up 6-5 and they called a timeout and had the opportunity to get a shot off. And our goalie blocked it, I'm pretty sure, and we ended up making it. And I'm not a super excitable person, but I don't think I've ever been so excited in sports, making the Olympics and knowing that we made it. But then there was also the other side of it, is that we made the Olympics, but none of us as individuals knew if we were going to make the team. So it was really cool that we made it, but then are we going to, for me, I was like, it was my only chance. So I was pretty nervous about it, but it all ended up.
That's it's a great segue into making the team. And we were talking about this last night with members of Australia and Russia and Team USA. And Guy, I know you tell this classic story of being on the pool deck and a phone call comes in and you don't want to be bothered. And the call's essentially that the roster is going to go from 11 to 13. Guy, your reaction to that, it's the toughest job of a coach to pick a team. Does that let you exhale a little bit? How do you handle that moment?
Well, I'll tell you how the team handled it. They had, we took 2 weeks off following like qualifying. That was I think the first week that we were back, but we'd had some meetings and talked, and I think we were going to be back for a couple of weeks. And I know we went to Australia for a tour with Australia during that time. And we were playing soccer. We're actually working on our counterattack. We actually rebuilt our counterattack after that time, but we did it through soccer. So we're playing soccer on a little patch of grass at Los Al. And Michelle came out and said I had a phone call. And like, come on, we're in practice. I'm not taking a phone call. This isn't, don't have an iPhone, don't have those things. We're not walking into an office and taking a phone call. And she goes, no, you need to take this phone call. And I'm like, and you guys know, I'm not taking the phone call. And then she goes, it's Bruce, he needs to talk to you. And I said, tell Bruce to call back. We're done with practice. And she gives me the look like, you need to take this phone call. And that's usually bad news. And then get on the phone with Bruce. And he says they approved 13 players. And it'd been the elephant in the room because we all came back because we had qualified with 13. We had 13 players. And we knew at some point in time during the summer, we were going to have to get down to 11. And so I told the team they're probably at that point in time watching. I don't think we were still playing soccer at that point in time because come back out and play, and then pull them together and said USOC are in. Actually, that'd be an international level approved for 13 players, and they actually just ran and jumped on each other and did a dog pile and just went crazy. So I thought it was fantastic and really great for the team, and it worked out. Honestly, it worked out really well because we had a few injuries during that time, and we were deeper and stronger by the time we got to Sydney with people playing, and that was really a fantastic thing that happened.
Heather, after that, what's the process like to find out that you make this team?
I think we had individual meetings. Guy, Michelle, and the coaching staff, like they really made sure that we had a moment with them and they were able to connect with each one of us and kind of staggered it a little bit so people wouldn't be running and stuff like that. And it was in the time where it wasn't as social media heavy as it is now. So things were a little bit slower in relaying the information through. But you had that individual meeting. They talked to you about what your role, I remember walking out kind of numb and just realizing like, oh, we did this, and okay, so we qualified, but then now it's, oh, we're really going, and we're going to be in Sydney, and we're going to be competing. So it was kind of, it took a couple days to honestly sink in and know that this was happening and that you were going to be going. And it's amazing. It was an amazing announcement.
I got to jump, Greg, the process to qualify was so intense. Like, we really didn't even talk about the Olympics. I remember we went to Australia post like qualification, and on the newspaper they're saying like 100 days to Olympics, and we're like, oh, it's 100 days away. I mean, there was no thought or talk about during that time. So it did get a little surreal when we actually did, like, we're going to Olympics, and then we got to like name a team and go through that process.
Julie, you've had the good fortune and the hard work to qualify in 2 different sports at the Olympic level. I imagine the water polo one, holds a special place. It was your first Olympics, but just your memory of that, and is it kind of like a pinch yourself moment? How do you remember that moment?
Well, you're talking about the water polo qualification or triathlon?
Yeah.
Water polo, it was, as Heather mentioned, you find out that you've made the team. And the first feeling is of relief, like I've made it, and then realize that this lifelong dream of yours is going to be achieved, but also the responsibility of, there was one player who trained with us all the way through who didn't get to go and be in the opening ceremonies and, get a medal at the end. And so the weight of that, I've got to be at my best. I can't just back and be like, all right, I made the Olympics. This is going to be great. I am taking somebody else's spot. That would have very likely have gone if I wasn't around. So, you have that personal responsibility, and then also the responsibility of the country. Like, we are the first women's water polo team to compete in the Olympics. And so, we want to represent ourselves well. We feel like we just barely made it into the Olympics. We wanted to make sure that it went well so that they continue to have women's water polo. And then the sport grows around the world. And, eventually, like now, that there's a lot more teams that get to compete. And that's, really what we wanted. But it was a total pinch yourself moment to get to qualify for water polo.
Mo, thinking back on your memory of this, you had the longest history with Team USA at that time, starting with the group as a 17-year-old. Right now, you fast forward, you'd be 39 at those Olympic Games. I have to imagine at some point in your career, you kind of put that Olympic dream away somewhere far away and thought, this isn't going to happen for me just because of the way sports are being decided. So when it does happen, is that a highly emotional moment? I mean, it has to be almost like a thing you didn't think would happen, and now here it is right in front of you.
Oh, totally. So we did a demonstration in 1984 in Los Angeles. We played Holland in a game up in Pepperdine, and it was pretty amazing. And we thought for sure that they would add it in 88, and they didn't. And they'd add it in 92, and they didn't. And they'd add it in 96, and they didn't. So I played all the way up until the 94 World Championships. And then when they said they weren't going to add it to 96, I retired. And I remember specifically, I was coaching up at Cal Berkeley on my way to go to work. And I read a 1-sentence thing in the San Francisco Chronicle saying, women's water polo added to the 2000 Olympics. And I kind of laughed. I was like, that's not true. And then later I found out it was true. And a month later I came out of retirement and we went to the World Championships in Australia, and we didn't do so well. But that was kind of the beginning. And then after that, Guy was picked as our coach, and we went into full-time training. And yeah, it was pretty surreal. It was pretty hard to believe that it was happening, but it all happened so fast. And then all of a sudden we were in full-time training, and then, like Guy said, it was, our whole focus was on qualifying for the Olympics, and it was not an easy task. And so then once we did qualify, and once, like, I knew that I had made the team, go back to what Julie said, I mean, I felt that times, I don't know how many, like all of the girls that played from the beginning that really tried to get women's water polo into the Olympics, but then they couldn't do it because, it was past their time. I remember sitting in the driveway when we were going to play Holland in the semifinals. And I remember just having my head between my knees thinking, oh my gosh, we have to win this game, because I was thinking of all of my friends at home that weren't there, that I knew were watching, And Holland had been in the championship of every big tournament in the history of women's water polo. So to play them in the semifinals was scary and nerve-wracking, but to beat them was another major highlight. Pretty fun.
And Mo, another question for you, only because it really applies to today's times. A lot of folks are stuck in their house and are probably concerned about getting back into water polo shape at a high level. They haven't been able to get into a pool the way they'd like. What was that process like to get back to where you wanted to be, to what you felt like was your elite water polo level?
I was 36 when we started, and honestly, I really just didn't feel like it was that hard to get there, to get in shape and be ready to play. And I had the years and years of experience. The part that was really hard was to hang on, and our training was super, super hard. And I was, 3 years later, I was 3 years older and 3 years more tired. So that was a much bigger issue for me, was to try to recover each day, because I felt like I had the experience, but I just had to have the energy.
So the team gets named, everyone finds out they make it. Heather, I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're the one non-Californian on this roster, right, in 2000?
Courtney.
Courtney. So one of
Johnson.
Gotcha.
Rachel.
So you and Courtney Johnson, one of a small number of people that are from outside. What was the reaction from your home area, and just being one of these first 13 to represent the U.S. in Olympic water polo?
I think, and when the naming happened, I think it was pretty, like, you did the interviews, the newspaper were doing things, and they did follow you along the stories. And like coming home after the Olympics and seeing all the news clippings that people sent and shared from just a small little newspaper in Green River. Green River, it's only it comes out once a week. That's all the news. So like to be in there for the Olympics was a big deal. It's not, I mean, it's nice coming from a small town. You get the recognition, you get to do a lot of different things. After the Olympics, going home and doing a lot of just speaking to kids in schools and talking about the experience and the journey and the hard work and the commitment and setting goals was kind of like really what I enjoyed after. Like that was seeing their excitement and how they did follow was fun.
Was that paper the Green River Rocket or something like that? What was that
Yes,
called?
it was the Green River Rocket.
in Wyoming, right?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic, awesome. That's your useless knowledge tidbit for the day. The local paper in
Exactly.
Green River. If anyone wants to subscribe, Julie, captain of this team, right? In 2000, just that extra, and not to call it pressure if you didn't feel that way, but I guess responsibility to help lead this group in the water. What was that like for you?
You know what? It wasn't like I felt like I was, really leading a bunch of people that weren't going to lead themselves. It was, it was a really tight-knit group because we were all training so hard. We had been through thick and thin together, as we talked about earlier, not qualifying and then going, in this last chance. We had now one thing that I was unique in, and that I played with the older group, which was Mo and all of the people that came before us. And then I also had played with the younger group before Mo came back from retirement. So maybe I was kind of in between. I was on the older side, but kind of bridged the generation gap. But I would say our team, there was really no two players that weren't getting along. There was no squabbling. It was a really close team. And so there was really not a lot I had to do except shake the hands of the referee at the beginning and exchange a pennant. And that was about it.
Guys, you get ready to take this team into action. Is there, I'm not a coach, so in my mind, if I was leading people into the first Olympic Games, my talk might be like, nobody freak out, this is going to be fine, it's regular water polo. But what's your talk as you go into this massive event?
Well, I don't remember the talk or what we did. I thought we were pretty prepared. Like where we went through a long period, which would probably be different now too. I think we finished playing in mid-July, and then our next official game wasn't until we played Netherlands in the first game of Olympic Games, which was like 2 months later. We had some scrimmages when we got there. But by that point in time, we were pretty dialed in. I mean, we were making a lot of progress through the time, and then there's nothing like practicing at Los Al in July and August, and you're going to come out of that. That's some serious dog days right there. And we did some really great, we trained really well in a really tough place to train during that time with the heat. And Mo already said it. When we played Netherlands, or Julie said it, probably our best game in the Olympics was the very first opening game. We played really well throughout the Olympics, but we played a really great first game against the Netherlands, and that kind of just took its course. But we'd kind of been through the whole process. It was just another day for us to, we were ready to go. We were prepared. We knew what we were going to do. And players did a great job when they got in the water and played. But we'd been there so many times by that point in time. We felt pretty experienced with just play water polo. That's all we did.
And because this was in Australia at the time, those games were held in September, right? Not in what we consider our summer.
Yeah, it's like mid-September, I think, was around the start day, somewhere around there.
So much talk about these games, and we mentioned it last night too, that the crowds could be massive, right? That final, everyone quotes the number of 17,000. Julie, to go to that venue and play Olympic water polo, that first game, what stands out in your mind from that very first Olympic game?
The first game was, it was not the 17,000 people that you're mentioning, but it was exciting to be out there. Now, all of the big international games kind of have the same format. And so, you parade around the pool at the beginning, and, you warm up, and then you get out and you get your robes on, you do the intros. And so that all felt very familiar to us. And we had a slogan, Los Al style, which means we're just going to play water polo just like we do in Los Al. It's just in a different spot. And so everything seemed very familiar. But I do remember being on the lane line. Corley did the first sprint, and it was like, this is it. Like, we are seconds away from my first Olympic water polo game. And so that was really noteworthy and exciting. When we got to that gold medal game, though, it was in a different venue. It was in the swim venue. And it was, you could say it was the loudest thing you've ever experienced. But until you were there and you could feel the crowd in your chest cavity. So, the air that's in your chest cavity, your lungs, just the reverberation of it. And I could be touching Mo and yelling as loud as I could. And Mo could not, unless she could read my lips, she could not hear what I was saying. The crowds were so deafening loud. And, Guy had us do a drill one time where we couldn't talk. We had to just play water polo, but you couldn't make a noise. You couldn't call out something. And that was a really good drill for that, because you couldn't communicate with your teammates. You just had to look for them and notice them and read their body language.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the silent count in football when they're trying to snap the football at a very, very loud stadium, and that helps get around the fans. Heather, as the games progress here, is there a sense of like, hey, we're playing pretty well, like we can do this thing as far as the medal goes? What's the frame of mind as you're working through the preliminary play?
I think our frame of mind was one game at a time. That was something that we played every day, which the format's changed after this first Olympics, but we played the first week. So the minute you were done with your first game, you knew you had to warm down. You had one practice the next day to get ready for your next competition. And it was something that like Guy and our coaching staff like really forced us to really stay in the moment of like, okay, that one's done, let's get ready for the next one, and like keep that momentum going. But it was really one game at a time, and making sure that we took care of what we needed to take care of on that day, so then we would have another day of continuing our success. And so with the win, our first win, we were over the moon, as like, because Julie and Mo, like, beating the Netherlands was huge because of just their history that they have in that. And so I think that win was something that we all took home and like went back to the Olympic Village, like really kind of hanging our hat on, like, yes, we did it. And like, we're here. And like Julie mentioned earlier, like Sports Illustrated saying that we're going to be number 5. I think that was something that was motivational for us to like give us a little bump into our games moving forward. But it was really focusing on one game at a time and one day at a time.
Talking with members of the 2000 Olympic team for Team USA. Mo, you talked about taking part in that 84 demonstration and hoping that would be, maybe the thing that led to Olympic water polo for women, to actually be out there and be playing as an Olympian. Were you thinking about all the things that had come in the past? What was your frame of mind as you're starting to play the games in Sydney?
Yeah, no, I don't think I was thinking of the whole past. I think I was thinking more of, like Heather said, we were in the moment, one game at a time. And since there were only 6 teams, every single game was so important. And I remember in our little house, we all lived in the same house. We had up on the wall, we had 3 goals. The first goal was to make the semifinal. And the second goal was to win the semifinal. And the third goal, well, we're in the gold medal game. We might as well win the gold medal. And so it was more like one goal at a time because it was a round robin and we had to get ourselves into that semifinal. Then we had to win the semifinal. So no, I mean, the only time I really feel like that I remember thinking about the past and how this is so amazing. I mean, I did appreciate every moment. I think at 39, you have a different mindset and I appreciate every single moment. But as far as the water polo, we were in the moment each day of that.
You mentioned the results, and Guy, looking at these results, and I was looking them up just yesterday, and of course the win over the Dutch to start, a tie against Canada. There's not really any lopsided games. There didn't look to be any quote unquote easy days out there. There was a 3-goal win over Kazakhstan. As you advance along and get to that semifinal, Guy, how did it help to have games you had to battle through? Did that keep everyone sharp? What was the benefit of having some close games throughout?
Well, yeah. Well, we've been everything international water polo. At least back when we played, everything was like 1 goal. So most everything that you did was you're going to either win or lose by a goal, and sometimes ties are just like as good as winning. Or if you're going to lose, especially in a round robin, you got to lose by a goal if you're going to lose. By the time we get to the semis, we got a day off. So, I mean, we got 5 points in the first 3 games. So we knew by then we were in really good shape. So the 2 points against Netherlands, if people are betting, we probably shouldn't have got the 2 points, but we got the 2 points and then got the tie with Canada. Then we beat Russia and we still got Kazakhstan at the end. So we pretty much know we're going to be at the semis at that point in time. It's one game at a time, but, as coaches, you were focused on that game, but we're also starting to shift into what's going to happen in that semifinal game. And then we get a day off in between. And so anytime we get a day off, that's always a great prep day and get everything set. And we're replaying Netherlands and that game ends up 6-5-2. We were pretty good in the 6-5 games toward the end. So that one's a little closer than the first one, but we'd already been, which they didn't mention in the Hungary game when we qualified, we scored to go ahead 6-5 with 6 minutes to go in the game and went 6 minutes, no goals scored during that time, just straight out, flat out, great defense and playing. We couldn't quite get it up to 2 and then went from there. So I remember being in the huddle. Heather had broke her nose, so she was hanging out behind the group at that point in time, and everybody just kind of at 6-5. We've been here before, and let's play one good series of defense here, and let's go try to win a gold medal. And essentially, that's where it happened. It was pretty calm at that point in time. We'd been there at that point in time and kind of knew what we needed to do, and players did a great job there.
Julie, in that semifinal, that 6-5 win over the Netherlands, what was the pivotal or turning point moment in your mind?
I can't think of a pivotal moment. I just, I know that we had been in that situation before, and it's all about defense on that. Like, we had every time they came down and attempted a shot, and as a 2-meter defender, I felt like I'm going to make sure that it does not come out of set. And so you just have to, whether or not we score at the other end is not as critical as we absolutely cannot let them score a goal at that end. And the Netherlands had a great counterattack. And so they're always looking to, really push that counterattack. And so even when you're on offense, you knew that the people up on top were looking to gross and go off the top and get down the pool. And so you had to be into your offense, but you had to think, I absolutely can't let anybody beat me off the top on defense.
Heather, after you win that sorry, good guy.
I just have to jump in. I'm sorry, I'm the coach, so I'll jump in occasionally on that. Like where the team is, like you just have to know how far this team came. When we played Netherlands to qualify the first time, we literally gave up a goal after goal when we didn't guard somebody. They didn't do anything. They just swam down and scored. Literally, like I'm with the kids now, so we really as a national team needed to call out a cap number who we were guarding. That's how they scored. When Hungary 6-5, the last seconds of that game when they're setting up, it was a little chaotic. I can't express how calm it was and the level of defense that the group played in that semifinal game when the score is 6-5 in the last possession. I mean, it was a clinic on defense. So the growth and progress that was made during that time from where it was from Winnipeg to Sydney was like phenomenal, like with the group as far as what was going on. And by the time we got to that semi, and like I said, the defense that was played was such a high level of defense. It was a joy to watch. It really was a completely different experience than we'd been experiencing previously. So
we're talking,
jump in on that.
Hey, it's all good. You have this amazing memory of very specific details that help fill in all the pictures in this. So appreciate it. We were talking about that semifinal win, and someone here had mentioned after the qualification win, it was just pure joy and celebration. Heather, after you win a semifinal, you're getting a medal of some kind. How do you kind of back pocket that and then get ready for a gold medal game?
I think my night before the gold medal game was different than I got my nose broken in the fourth quarter of the semifinal. So I remember that game. I just remember Bernice coming up with a tremendous block towards the end of the fourth quarter. And I kind of just got put into the medical circle. So I was kind of removed from the team. So I didn't really get to experience like the overall joy because we needed to get to medical. I needed to get x-rays. But the whole time I just knew that everyone was doing what they needed to do to get ready, that we were all like, we had our moment of like really enjoying it and like really kind of experiencing. I think from that, the highlight for me was walking out, because Guy and Michelle set up like where we were, after every game, we always got to go out to a patio where our families were, because you're kind of removed from your families. And so we would get to go out and spend that time. And I think walking out and seeing the pure joy on our families and like their excitement for what we did and like what I think that was like the moment where it was like, oh, wow, this is like, just that was like really, really, I think like a highlight for me of like experiencing that and having that experience with my family and with my teammates' families. Like it was an overall celebration of like what we just accomplished. And I think that was a highlight.
Julie, what do you remember about the aftermath of that semifinal, whether it's in the water or post game in the locker room? Is it that joy of winning a silver medal, or does it immediately pivot to let's go for a gold? How does the group handle it?
There was definitely joy. I think we had probably an hour to just talk to our parents and celebrate. And I mean, I think we got right into what are we going to do to win the gold medal. I would say within probably 2 hours of that. So, you've got this big tournament and each little marker is good. And, I think that we were good about really taking the time to celebrate and applaud ourselves for, we've met another goal, but we still have something else. As Mo said, the 3 goals on the wall, we still have a third goal, and we got to figure out what we need to do to reach that goal.
Mo, you've talked about this in the past, but your story going into those games was one that folks like NBC super interested in, right? You're retired, you come back, you're the oldest person on the team, you have a young daughter. How do you try and, of course, take part in that? It's good for the promotion of the sport, but really stay laser focused on the task at hand.
I think, one guy had us so prepared that we almost didn't even have to think, because we just did what we were told to do. So that made it easy. And I was 39. And so I think you can process all of that a lot more. It was really fun. I got to see Kelly, like Julie and Heather said, after the games, we got to go see our families, and it was good. And I remember specifically winning that Holland game. And I don't want it to sound negative, but I can't tell you how many years I sat there on the side of the pool deck and watched Holland celebrate, jumping in the pool, flowers in the pool, singing in the showers. And when we won that game, it was bittersweet, because it was us that was going to the finals, and it was the Olympics, and the first time ever. I remember getting out of the water, and that was where my second time that I was so unbelievably excited that we won that game, because it was so much more than just a semifinal of the Olympics. It was beating Holland in the semifinals. I don't think they could have scripted it any better. And then I remember looking up at the stands and seeing my brother, and he was crying because he was so excited. It was really good. It makes me cry now. It was just so cool.
It sounds like a moment of disbelief, Mo. Does that kind of just exceed your expectations going in? I mean, you said it, that's what someone who was writing the story would write. You know, this person comes back, they play the Dutch after watching them win, and now they get to exercise that and beat them.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody I would have rather played in the semifinal and beat than the Dutch. Well, maybe Canada, but it was just better that it was the Dutch. And we got to play them and beat them to go to the finals, and they weren't in it.
Well,
So
I'd like to add also,
Yeah.
for all the players that came before us, the biggest rival for anyone that played since Mo first began until the Olympics, their big rival was the Netherlands. And so, as we're celebrating, we're happy because we're going to the gold medal game, but there's also a piece of each one. And even the players who were too young to even know what we were talking about, we told them the story on how this meant a great deal to the older players. And so we're celebrating not just for us, but for all of the players who had played the Netherlands and had to watch them celebrate, and the US team losing to the Netherlands. And so just knowing that there was a huge celebration and all the players that came before us back home, and, us representing and getting the job done.
You go to the gold medal game. Guy, what does that day leading up to the game look like? Is there a chance for a morning loosen out, or how does the team get ready for that gold medal final?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact. It was a late game. We played, so there was plenty of time. It took that night it takes a little while to get. I think we all went to bed pretty late. Not that we're up or doing anything. Just you got to get the game out of the system and move on the next day. But we got to warm down. We get a time in the pool. We'd have our meeting, but the game was, I want to say, probably a 9 o'clock start time or something like that. So it felt like a whole nother day, and everybody's ready by that point in time. And we got to go to the venue. That was the first time we got to go to the swim stadium. So we saw it. We may have had a practice earlier. I can't remember during that time, but our practice before the game was at the swim stadium. So we got to get familiar with, get a general idea what it was going to be like. The practice was great, but it gave no indication what was going to happen once we got the game with all the people over there. But I remember walking out. We had to watch the game. We'd sit in the coach's room, and Christy Plain and I, we'd have a coffee before every game, and you'd find a place, and we'd always find a private place, and we'd just sit and wait till our game time. And we were watching the Russia-Netherlands game for the bronze medal, and he goes, should we go take a look at this? And I remember we walked out, and we're like, holy crap. I mean, this is so many people like where they are. I'm really glad that we did that. Probably would have passed out as we did the walkout if I didn't get to see it before. So I was prepared to okay, this is what we're walking into. We had great USA support, but I say we were a little probably outnumbered in that game when we played Australia. But it was awesome. What a great experience for us, and to be part of that. I mean, it was absolutely the place that we definitely wanted to be. And we were definitely pretty excited all day to get a chance playing that game.
Heather, you come out and walk out on this pool deck in front of all of these people. Like Guy said, are you ready to pass out? I mean, this has to be easily the biggest crowd you've ever played in front of.
I think we all took a step back, because as Julie said, it kind of hits you, boom, it's right in your face. But it was comforting having your team with you. It kind of made it all okay, because you knew that everyone around you was there for you, and it was a team attack. And no matter what adversity we came to, so walking out together and knowing that your teammates had your back, that was us. It was low south style. That was something that I remember that before we even walked out, it was something that we said. And fortunately, Robin Bogard was the one right behind me, and every game she did the circus song, and she did it this game, and it kind of just it's kind of your norm. And so keeping everything as normal as possible really kind of helped enter that environment and handle it but it was intense. It was definitely intense.
Julie, so many championship games in any sport, the first quarter or half is a little ragged. People trying to figure out what the pace is, how it's being officiated. What was your memory of kind of getting into the play in that championship game?
I remember it being a defensive battle. I could definitely tell you that. I think, was it scoreless at half, guys?
2-2. Oh,
Yeah,
2-2?
yeah, we got up to good. Yeah, Greg, we're a little disappointed. Yeah, Liz Weeks she was blocking everything. I thought we actually.
A really low scoring.
We were controlling the game. We just couldn't get the ball in the goal. We actually we came out really, really well. But Liz was, geez, almighty. She could have let a couple of those go and still had a lot of saves.
Yeah. The emotions were high on both teams, and both teams were coming out all guns firing, everything that we possibly had defensively and offensively. But the two styles match up really well together. And so no matter what the offensive threw, the defense was there to cover.
And everyone should know that Liz Weeks is watching right now and just said hello. So
yeah, she was, man, phenomenal. He was phenomenal, as was Bernice, but she was phenomenal.
So this game gets down to the final moments. I think it's Brenda, right, that ties it late in the game. Mo, just those final moments there, you're able to kind of come back close. It has to be a nerve-wracking moment. What are your memories of that final minute or two?
My memory was we were, correct me if I'm wrong, we were down. What was it, 3-2? We were down? Yep. And then guy called a timeout, 25 seconds to go. He couldn't hear a thing. And what I remember is something about San Diego. And we had worked on this play when we went to get all of our stuff through processing. And I remember this specifically because we were all it was so fun. We got all this really cool stuff. We go through with shopping carts, and then they were going to do photos. And so they did our hair and makeup, and we were sitting with the men's baseball team chatting. And then guys like, let's go, you guys, we have practice. And we're like, practice? We're like, are you kidding me? And we worked on this play in this really hot pool down in San Diego. Well, it came down to that, and that was the play that we were going to work on. And so when we got out there, I just remember we got out there. I remember being next to Heather, and nobody could move because everybody was holding everybody after the timeout. But it all worked out. My individual memory was I ended up at SAT, and the ball went all the way around, and I see the girl all the time that was guarding me here in Australia, and she laughs about it because she's like, there's no way I was going to let you score. But she had one hand around my neck and one hand around my waist. And I remember my thinking was, can you please just pass the ball in because I'm going to drown. I can't breathe. And we finally got the ball passed in, and they called an ejection, and Brenda scored. And I remember after that going, oh my God, it's tied. There's no way we're going to win this thing. We're by far the fittest team in the world. It's going to go into overtime, and we're going to win. And I just remember not being nervous at all, being super excited about it. And then what happened and changed everything all in 1 second.
Yeah, and it's a last second goal that I'm sure is part of Australia's greatest hits when it comes to their athletic moments, and one that was at least if you watch the replays, feels like a controversial ending, a lot of confusion about what went on. Guy, you I'm sure remember this down to the millisecond. What is your memory of what transpired there, and then trying to get an understanding of what went on?
Well, in fairness, because the Aussies will give me a hard time, on the pick and the play we ran, Mo earned 6 ejections on the pick by the time we got the ball into her. So I think, we played good defense. I felt that Australia was kind of moving the ball around. Felt like it was going into overtime. We got an exclusion on the perimeter, which was an interesting call. And from there, on the ejection, the ball went towards our center into the goal, but didn't count. Ball came back out. And then Yvette picked it up and scored a direct shot at that point in time. So we were, it felt like where we were trying to guard, did the goal count? Did it go? The ball, we threw the ball back out they retrieved the ball, threw the ball back out to them. And then she shot, and then she scored. And the game was over. We're trying to get clarification there as far as, just kind of how it ended pretty quickly. So I know that part was, it was great for them and it was tough for us. And, but at the same time, we don't know. I mean, the game would have, even if it went into overtime, the game still had a long ways to go and still be decided. And, that's the way it goes as far as that part goes. And the team did a awesome job of rallying and, going from there at that point in time. But I will tell you, it was a big deal. The great part of the first Olympic Games that we went to, we played the first week. And so the second week we got to be tourists. It's different now, like you spread out. And honestly could not go anywhere. And I was even on a commercial with my hands waving, that's no goal. So I'd get into a cab or I'd go different places and I was the American coach, and seems like other countries get a big kick out of beating Americans. So that seemed to be kind of prevalent as we went around, and was getting a coffee. And the one girl goes, "That's the American coach." And the other person serving the coffee goes, "What are you talking about?" And I went around and gave her a hug. It was the first Aussie I think I'd seen in like 5 days who wasn't at the game or had watched the game. Their whole country watched the game. And it really probably was the single most important game for international women's water polo. I mean, just with the crowd that was there and their country and how many people it impacted and what it took for everybody to even have a women's Olympic game that Mo, is referenced. And I know Liz talked about it yesterday too. So it was a big, big deal. And Mo's sportsmanship and the Aussie our sportsmanship also was phenomenal at the end of the game. So I think with our two countries, we always competed pretty hard against each other and let the chips lie where they may. And, you go on from there, and it was an awesome, great game and a tremendously thing to be a part of.
And
Julie,
if I
you
can
remember-
just,
Oh, sorry,
can I
go ahead,
just
Mo.
chime in for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm living here in Australia now. I get reminded of it a lot. And I actually coach with Yvette, which is, to me, is like the ultimate in sports. Here we played against each other in the Olympics in the gold medal game. She scored the winning goal to win the gold medal. And now we coach together. And her best friend is Liz Weeks. So I see Liz all the time too. But what's amazing about it is what great sports the Australians are. I mean, I remember my experiences. We would go out and have some sodas at night when we were finished. And I just remember anybody that saw you were like, "Oh, you're like on the American water polo team. That was the most amazing game. Nobody deserved to lose." And I mean, just the Australians are just amazing sports about that. And it's pretty cool because that's how sports should work.
That's an excellent perspective, and especially from where you're at, also being in Australia, being around it. And that was kind of one of many, right? The U.S. and Australia would go on to have all these epic battles and Olympics and world championships. And Julie, Heather, and we'll start with Julie, just, similar question and similar memory there. You go from tying the game and then kind of this wild ending. Is it almost disbelief that now it's over? How do you remember that moment?
Yeah, it was definitely disbelief. There was so much confusion about what had just happened. And as I mentioned, you couldn't hear anything. And so a referee called the ball out. And if you were not looking at the ball, if you're looking at the ref who was right next to you, trying to figure out, usually the referees look at each other, they're both ready. Okay, they'll signal ball in. So if you were caught looking at this referee, you had no idea what was going on. The ball's in play over here, and this referee is still trying to figure things out. So it was a lot of confusion and disbelief. And, in the end, they're not going to go back and say, "Oh, yeah, you know what? That wasn't a good call. And let's replay the last 1.6 seconds tomorrow so we find out who the real winner is." I mean, this is sports. And so they're going to make a call. We can choose to agree with it or disagree with it. And, tomorrow morning, we're all going to wake up and life's going to continue on. But, it was definitely controversial. I don't think that their team felt very good about winning that way. I think they thought they were the better team, but they wanted to win on a legitimate call where everybody understands, like, it's just part of the game.
In team sports, and we're talking about this last night as well, it's so tough for the silver medal group, right? The gold medalist, the bronze medalist gets to end on a win. Silver is still on the podium, right? Second place, a medalist, but has to end on a loss. Heather, what's that moment like? The game ends. How does everyone try and process this and then get your gear on and go get a medal, which is still an awesome thing, but you're coming off of this heartbreaking loss?
It was hard. It was just the end of the game, the way the game ended, because I feel that like all of us after scoring and tying it, it was just, okay, we were a solid defensive team. So get a stop, move forward. There wasn't a lot of time. We're going into overtime, and then, well, we have this. It's not a problem. And for it to end that way, and then to transition into, okay, now we're going to an award ceremony, but you just lost the game, was really difficult. It was, I think it was in the locker room where everyone had like a moment. But it was one of those things where I don't know if it was Guy or Chris or if it was just something our team did, where it's like we had 5 minutes to kind of really wallow in what had happened. And then after that 5 minutes, we were kind of just supposed to, like, we regrouped and like we came together as a team and we held each other up and like, hey, we still accomplished something tremendous, getting a medal and winning a medal. And that was kind of our switch in our mentality. But like, we all took that 5 minutes of really kind of wallowing and taking it to heart of like, it was a second. It was just one glimpse where it kind of things changed so quickly. And so, but to stand up on the podium, I think initially, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be that second place because you just lost that game. But I feel like after then processing and going through that whole thing, I think we all kind of took it in and said that we really accomplished something as a team and as our group.
Yeah, and similar thought, Julie, as you get the medal and you kind of come in off the podium, and I feel like everyone's different in how they pick up perspective on this, right? And I talked to different athletes that are like, it took me a couple of years before I really got to appreciate this. And then others, maybe it's, in the moment. Where were you at and kind of coming back and saying like, hey, this is pretty special, like given the bigger picture, right? It's first Olympics for women's water polo, first US team, first silver medal. Did that take a little while to sink in? How did you process that?
I think it was probably sooner for me. One of the hardest days. So as captain, you go through the media maze. And so, right after we have this, a very emotional loss, I'm supposed to go through and have an interview, and I don't want to seem like a sore loser. So I had to sort of really think about like, okay, what does this feel like? And there is always, I truly believe it's your attitude. There's always a silver lining. So we got to go to the Olympics. We are coming away with a medal. And I look at all the players that played with Mo and before who didn't get the chance to go to the Olympics, and they would have killed for a silver medal. So, just really there's a lot of gratitude that one can have. So the initial emotion, like Moody said, the initial emotion is there and it's important to recognize it. But then you have a decision to make, a fork in the road. Do you want to just keep wallowing in that sadness, or do you want to find the positives and go on from there? And so I would say probably later that night, maybe the next day, I did a lot of sightseeing with Gubba while I was there. And so, you just kind of get to realize how special this moment is. And one of Gubba's favorite tricks was we would come in from sightseeing and she would stick her medal underneath her shirt and we go through the metal detector and she's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know. And I don't know. And then they like wander and she's like, oh, it must be this. And then of course people are saying like, oh my gosh, can I look at it? Can I touch it? And, so just getting to share it and, share the experience. And I remember the first time I touched Chris Duplanty's medal and I was thinking, I want to go to the Olympics. I want to get one of these for myself. So getting to share that experience with others, that definitely help heal any wounds from that game and sore feelings from that game.
Mo, I remember, I think you're telling a story. Was it after this game where they want to interview you and you're trying to see if your daughter's around and they have her like perfectly positioned so that you can see her right there, and just kind of your memory of that and kind of how your family and all of this came all together there once? Oh, you're still on mute.
I remember it exactly. Julie and Heather said it all, that we were a team and we were in it together. So that was super comforting. But I remember after when we first lost, everybody was really upset and like throwing their caps off. Like, I can't believe it. And I remember saying, you guys, it's not over. They're not gonna count that goal, and we're gonna play overtime. So we need to focus here. And then Guy came back over and said it was over. And it was like, oh, wow, it's over. It is really hard as an athlete to have things end without, real closure. But yeah, so after that, when we realized that it was over, it all seemed like it happened so fast. But NBC had brought Kelly down onto the pool deck, and nobody like access on the pool deck's really hard. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what's Kelly doing down here? And I was not happy. And so she comes running into my arms, and she sees that I'm sad, so she starts crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? And then NBC comes with a big camera and asks the question, so Maureen, how does it feel to lose the gold medal in the last 1 second? And exactly, what Julie and Heather said is, I think I would have been mad for a really long time losing that game, but that brought clarity instantly, because when you are in an interview and you can't say anything negative, so you have to think like, what's the positive of this? And so I remember closing my eyes thinking, what am I going to say? And I remember just thinking, wow, it's not about the last 1 second of the gold medal game of the Olympics. It's about the whole journey and getting women's water polo into the Olympics and getting to make the Olympic team and walking through the tunnel of opening ceremonies and playing in the Olympics and getting to the gold medal game and playing in that and getting a medal in the Olympics. It's just not all that bad. And it made me feel so much better immediately. And then right after that, some of us had to go to a press conference, which was really hard, but the Australians were just such amazing, great sports about the whole thing. And then after that, we had a celebration with our families. And I don't think there was one of them they were just all so elated for us. You could feel the love in the room. And it was a very happy moment. And then after that, we were hanging out with the women's soccer team, some of us, and they had lost on a handball. They had lost the gold medal on a handball, and we all decided that we had the platinum medal, which is one step above the gold. So we actually we made out pretty well.
Guys, you think back on the aftermath of this, right? And I think you're always famous for saying, right, one way or another, you're gonna have some tears at the end of this journey. What'd you say to the group, before maybe they leave the pool deck or before they go see their families? Is there one final little get together before you send them on their way?
Well, I remember it was a little concerning if we were actually going to go to the podium at first. But everybody, as Heather said, everybody kind of processed a little bit and had a little bit of time. No, and Mo just said it too. It's always the journey. I mean, you would never give up. You want to have those moments and those feelings, to be in that moment and be in that game. If you're going to get your heart broken, I mean, I would always, I think everybody that's here and would be on that team wanted to be in that game and wanted to be in that moment. And when we stepped into the arena, we knew there's no one that didn't think it wasn't possible we could walk off being heartbroken. And everybody thought we could come out feeling like, we're going to win a gold medal. But I don't think any of us would trade that moment. And I don't, with this group and this team, as far as, their legacy and what they've done. And as Mo said, with the journey and the process and where they started and where they finished, like ultimately that's what it's about. And there's definitely a lot of tears that were shed, and we've all experienced, we've been on the good side of, when you have won, and we've also been on the other side when you've lost, and that's just sports and it's competition. And we wanted to compete, and we did a hell of a job at competing, and that's all we wanted to do. And for that one game, we were just a little bit short, but more times than not, we weren't. So, but I think everybody collectively and everybody has talked about those things, and it was the group. And I think the group got through that moment. And as Mo said, the post thing and the going to the hotel afterwards and being with your family and having opportunities to think about where we were. And that part was a special part. And I think that's always what kind of keeps with this group and the legacy of this group also.
In the year 2000, there's no text message, right? I think probably cell phone, email, fairly primitive. Heather, when you get home, what's the reaction then? I mean, is that when kind of the deluge of everyone who wasn't there can now reach out to you?
I think so. But my experience was the group of people that I was at those were the people that I wanted to celebrate with, and I had that opportunity. When we go into full-time training, your group gets small. It's a small community. It's like an extended family. And I was fortunate enough that my family was at the Olympics, so I had the best of both worlds. So coming home was nice and it was exciting. And you do get to, like, you hear more and more about it. But the people that were important for that journey for me was there. And so I think that having that, my extended family reaching out and giving congratulations and doing all that stuff was great. But I really, really, looking back, especially now, 20 years out, just the journey with the people and in less than a year, what we did to accomplish what we accomplished was tremendous. And so I think that that's something that you look back on and you pull from. So, but yeah, coming home was fun. It was great. I mean, I remember at the qualification tournament, we were in a line for the one payphone so we could call home and tell everyone that we qualified. Like, that's how, like, I called my parents, was on a collect call from the pool payphone. Hey, we qualified. So things have definitely changed. But yeah, it's coming home is definitely always great.
And Greg,
Julie, what was your memory of coming home?
You want to go, Guy?
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, Greg, you got it, just to give an impression of like full-time training. We had 14 athletes. We had 3 coaches, so we got 18 people. It's essentially the same 18 people for like 2 years straight. And that means, like, you're hopping on a bus and you're going to go play this game where you may get your ass kicked or butt kicked, RPG, and stuff like this. And you got to bond together as a team, or you're trying to qualify and you're going to get back on that bus and you're going to show up the next day. So the hard part after the Olympics is you spend so much time with just a group of people. You're almost isolated. I mean, you still get your family, and it was important for people to see their family. But the hard part after Olympics is that, okay, you're no longer together because you've been together for so long and been through so many experiences. I mean, we're leaving out a lot of the journey and the process and the experience that you go through just to get your heart broken, to be in that, just to be in that moment, what it took to be there. So that bond with the group is like post-Olympics is you're looking for that. I mean, that's always the hard part afterwards because you're not with your team anymore, and as much as you're, especially athlete-wise, like 6 hours a day, like, why are we doing this? All of a sudden it's not there, and like, oh, maybe I want to still do this or, be a part of that. So with this group, they definitely experience that closeness of like with the group and, being a full team. So sorry, jumped in.
Yeah.
Julie?
When I came home, actually piggybacking off of what Guy said, there was definitely a gap. So there was the excitement and getting to share, like I said, the medal with people who maybe had never seen an Olympic medal, and, talk about the Olympic experience. And then, to fill I love working out. And so to fill my workout time, our team chiropractor, Tom Gallagher, said, if you win a medal and you come back, I'll drive you over to Catalina on my boat to do the last triathlon of the year. And it was about 4 weeks after we got back from Sydney. And so I had a friend whose wife was pregnant and had size 12 feet like I do. And so he said, you can borrow my wife's bike and her shoes. And so I just kind of filled in my training. It wasn't the people that I knew and loved, but at least it gave me a group to be with and to train with and suffer with until I started my first triathlon. So that's kind of one way that I filled part of the void that I was feeling afterwards.
Mo, you had mentioned kind of, carrying the memories of all these women that didn't get a chance to be in the Olympic Games. I have to imagine you heard from quite a few of them once you get home and you come back as a silver medalist. What was your memory of that time coming home?
Yeah, they're all my friends to this day. So we see each other all the time, and it's bittersweet. You kind of feel like you don't want to celebrate too much because they didn't get to do that. And at the same time, it's like they wanted to hear what it was all about. So it was fun. It was good. And I mean, for me, it was different because I was 39 and I had to be a mom. I had to get home and be a mom again. I kind of wasn't a very good mom for 2.5 years. And so, and I was tired, and, you know, to recover. And, but I think Julie, Guy, and Heather all hit it, that there is a big void of being with those people together for 2.5, almost 3 years, to just boom, nothing, it's over. And that can be a little bit hard. And for me, it was over. There was no, for sure, 100%. And so it's sad. But, you know, you move on and life goes on, and you look back at the memory and all you remember are the good things.
This has been just a fantastic chat that could easily go another 2 hours with all the great stories that we have. I just kind of want to end on this with the same question for everybody. And Liz Weeks brought it up last night, in that she said she's more proud of the efforts to get water polo into the Olympic Games than that of winning a gold medal, just because that'll affect so many future generations. So to have the sport included meant more to her, but the gold still means a lot too, of course. But the question for you four, and we'll start with Guy, just what does it mean to you? You know, you're all a part of this historic moment, this first for women's water polo, whether you feel like, you know, you're obviously just one person, but you're one of only a select few to be a part of this. Guy, as you think back on it 20 years later, what did it mean to you? What does it mean to you to have been a part of this very first Olympic Games for women's water polo?
I feel on our side, we just kept it going. I mean, the USA I came in as the new coach and a little bit on the outside, but it'd already been a phenomenal program. And we all had a responsibility to keep it. You know, Heather and Courtney being, you know, players from outside of California, that was a tradition within the USA Women's program. Being committed, being a community, in doing those things. We just had to keep it going and get it going in a right direction. I didn't feel necessarily, I didn't live through it, but I did in some ways live through some of the pain where they didn't get into the Olympic Games. So it was just a great opportunity, and we wanted to make sure we did right by everybody else that didn't get the opportunities for, and make sure we take advantage of the opportunity that we were given.
Heather, you'd go on to play in 04, you'd coach, right, 08 and 12, but what does 2000 mean to you thinking back on it now?
I think looking back on it now, it was just a significant step for the sport, for women's water polo. And just as Julie mentioned early on, and Mo has mentioned, there's a lot of history, and there's a lot of women that played the sport, and the highest point that they could go was world championships. And I was fortunate where I was old enough, but young enough to get that experience with those ladies, and just interacting with them and hearing their stories and hearing their journey and what they went through. I think it was really significant for us as a group and as a team to maintain that culture and to move forward with it and grow with it. And I think through this whole process and being part of the 2004 and going and coaching in 08 and 12, it's all about the stepping stones that each group is developing. And I think really it starts with the work and the commitment and the journey. And Guy and our coaching staff did an amazing job making sure that we understood our journey and that we respected our journey. And we really we were very honored as a group to represent the United States in this great opportunity. But we were also taking in the fact that with Mo and being on this team and being an older athlete, she had those stories, and she was able to give us that for the younger athletes, what the history. We needed that history of what we fought for and what this really is significant. And I think that was something that was part of our journey, especially after we touched on it more after we didn't qualify. And then that next getting ready to go to Europe and do that European qualification, it was something that we really addressed as a group and showed the importance of it. And so history is important. And so I think that was something that I look back on the 2000 Olympics as it's an amazing journey, and I'm very fortunate that I was part of it.
Julie, you've had the front row seat here for the latest success of the USA Women Golds in Rio and of course London. But what does it mean to you to be a part of that foundation from 2000?
You know, it was really being in the right place at the right time. If I could describe it in one word, it would be gratitude. You know, just I feel so fortunate I was at the right age and had the opportunity. But it was almost as if I was just carrying a torch that was lit a long time before. And, you know, all the players who were working full time and playing water polo, funding their water polo travel. I still remember Sandy Nita buying us robes because all the other countries had these nice outfits and we had really nothing that matched. And so out of her own pocket, she paid for robes. And with Von Cab Lubick, we would sell t-shirts to help fund our trips. And we're not talking like a vacation trip. We're talking about like a trip to a World Cup or, you know, trip to World Championships. And every person was supposed to sell like 80 t-shirts to fund their plane trip ticket to get there. So just incredible gratitude that I got to be a member of this team and represent the United States, and you know, pride that I felt like we represented our country well, and we, you know, brought a medal. We really set a precedence for what the future would hold it with U.S. water polo.
And last but not least, Mo, you talked about it. You're in Australia, so Sydney's not far from your mind. You're around the women you played against back in 2000. Where does this historic moment live for you?
I think I just go right off of Julie. I'm just grateful that I got to be part of it, because I was at the very end of my career, and yeah, the beginning days were amazing. We bought our swimsuits. We went to World Championships and weren't part of anything. We would go to locker rooms and it was only boys water polo that was playing, and it was embarrassing. And to get from that to playing the sport because we loved it, then for it finally getting in the Olympics, I just feel like super grateful that it came at the very last time of when I could get to do it. And so for me, it was like the beginning of the end. It was like the end of my career, but the beginning of water polo, really, for women's water polo for the world. It took off after 2000. And I just feel super lucky to be part of it. And I think Guy really made us a team, and he got us out of our comfort zone every day, which made us really be close together as a group. And so we'll always have that special bond, even though we don't see each other all the time. It's something that we went through that was really, really, really difficult. Like Guy said, he didn't talk about it, the hard times, but there were a lot of hard times. And to get through that and to get to play in the Olympics, I mean, I just look back at it as such a happy moment.
That's a great way to end it. 20 years ago this year, Sydney Olympics. Thanks so much. 3 athletes and the head coach, Heather Moody, Julie Swail, Maureen O'Toole, head coach Guy Baker. A pleasure to talk with you all. Really appreciate you taking the time to stroll down memory lane here.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Greg.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, you guys.